History remembers Napoleon as a master tactician who rarely lost control of a battlefield. But for one night, in 1809, his own multinational army, French, Italian, and Saxon troops, turned on itself and opened fire on its own men, not once, but 3 times. Understanding how an army ends up fighting itself starts with understanding how it got there in the first place. Napoleon crushed Austria at Austerlitz in 1805, and the Holy Roman Empire collapsed the following year. Rebuilding came next, with Archduke Charles of Austria-Teschen overhauling the army through a new corps system modeled on the French, plus a fresh militia force called the Landwehr. By April of 1809, Austria felt ready for a rematch and invaded Bavaria. Kicking off the War of the Fifth Coalition, Napoleon took personal command, won a string of engagements, and marched into Vienna. But forcing a crossing of the Danube proved harder than expected. That attempt produced his first major personal defeat at the Battle of Aspern-Essling on May 21st and 22nd, 1809. A fight that cost him one of his most trusted commanders, Marshal Lanz, who was mortally wounded there. Rushing back wasn't Napoleon's style. 6 weeks went into meticulously preparing a second river crossing from an island called Lobau. And on the night of July 4th, 1809, under cover of a thunderstorm, the army finally made it across the Danube. What followed became the Battle of Wagram, fought on July 5th and 6th near the village of Deutsch-Wagram, north of Vienna. Roughly 300,000 men fought there by most counts, with casualty estimates on both sides commonly landing around 74,000 combined, making it the largest battle Europe had seen up to that point. Poor clothing choices. The Saxons had a uniform problem. Their infantry still wore old-style white coats and bicorn hats in 1809. Uniforms that were, by that point, essentially obsolete relics of the late 1700s. And the trouble was that Austrian infantry wore white coats too. That similarity might not matter much in daylight with clear sight lines. But the evening of July 5th brought darkness, and the battlefield filled with smoke from thousands of muskets and cannon, until visibility collapsed entirely. Nearly every soldier on the field outside of the green-coated Jaeger units was wearing some shade of white, and French, Saxon, and Austrian troops alike were all shouting commands in the same language. German, darkness, smoke, near-identical uniforms, and a shared language of command. That combination is what set up the disaster. The first incident, as the sun went down on July 5th, Beauharnais' Franco-Italian troops attacked near a village called Baumersdorf, only to have Archduke Charles personally lead an Austrian counterattack that checked their advance. In the chaos and smoke, some of Beauharnais' own reserve troops opened fire on the Italian troops in front of them, their own side. Panic spread through the Italians, and they broke, stopped from fleeing further only when they ran into the fixed bayonets of Napoleon's Imperial Guard. That was the first incident, and it wouldn't be the last. The second incident, shortly after, a mixed French and Saxon division under General Dupas pushed up onto high ground near Wagram, and Archduke Charles's counterattack drove them back. French troops retreating and fresh French units arriving in the near darkness spotted white-coated soldiers ahead of them. And here's where it gets worse. They opened fire, believing they'd found Austrians. They hadn't. Those were Dupas's own Saxon battalions, hit from behind by their own allies, and one unit in particular, the Schützen Battalion, was effectively torn apart in the confusion. The third incident, the most serious incident, came later that night. And it's the one historians have documented most thoroughly. Bernadotte's Saxon corps didn't begin its assault on the village of Wagram itself until around 9 p.m. One Saxon brigade fought its way inside, but got stopped by Austrian defenders, and a second brigade sent in as reinforcement simply dissolved in the smoke-filled streets. That's when a Saxon general named Hartich arrived at around 10:30 p.m., leading the last reserves of Saxon infantry. He'd been ordered to take the village, but nobody told him Saxon troops were already fighting inside it. White-coated soldiers emerged from the village as his men advanced, and assuming they'd found Austrians, Hartich's men opened fire. A significant number of their own countrymen went down before anyone realized the mistake. The Saxons, who'd already been fighting inside Wagram, now appeared to be under attack from both the front and the rear, and that's what broke them completely. By around 11 p.m., they were falling back in disorder to a nearby village called Ederkla, the Fallout. This is where the friendly fire stopped being just a tragic accident and started actually shaping the outcome of the battle. Bernadotte's Saxon corps sat shattered and demoralized, and in the early hours of July 6th, without orders and without telling Napoleon, Bernadotte abandoned Ederkla, a village that mattered enormously since holding it could have split the Austrian army in two. Austrian forces under Bellegarde simply walked in and took it unopposed. Napoleon's fury was immediate. He rode to the scene personally, helped organize a counterattack to retake the village, and dismissed Bernadotte from command on the spot, ending his career serving under Napoleon, though not his career overall. Sweden's crown would eventually be his. He went on to become Crown Prince and later King of that country. Brutal fighting carried the battle through its second day, with a massive French artillery barrage and a costly French infantry assault that got reduced to a fraction of its starting strength under Austrian cannon fire. Archduke Charles ordered a withdrawal by afternoon on July 6th, once it became clear that reinforcements under his brother, Archduke John, wouldn't arrive in time. Napoleon had won, but he'd failed to destroy the Austrian army, and his pursuit afterward stayed weak. The defeat still proved enough to force Austria to the table, though. An armistice followed on July 12th, and a final peace agreement, the Treaty of Schönbrunn, got signed that October. What actually happened at Wagram reveals something true about how coalition warfare worked in that era. French, Italian, Bavarian, and Saxon troops made up Napoleon's army, not one uniform force, operating across a front, miles wide with no radios and no reliable way to tell friend from foe once daylight and clear uniforms disappeared. Commanders like Masséna and Davout often acted with real independence for the simple reason that messages couldn't move fast enough across the battlefield. And once you add obsolete white Saxon uniforms that looked just like Austrian ones into that mix, a friendly fire disaster stopped being a freak accident and became close to inevitable. Conclusion: Wagram gets remembered as Napoleon's decisive win, the battle that ended the War of the Fifth Coalition. Buried inside that victory, though, is a night where his own multinational army turned its muskets on itself 3 separate times. Italians shot at by their own reserves, Saxons shot at by retreating Frenchmen, and Saxons shot at by other Saxons who had no idea their countrymen were already there. The mistake and the confusion it caused very nearly cost him the battle